Hello, everybody. My name is Lori Stoker Trotter. A lot of you might remember me from high school or grade school. I am doing this project with Kim and one of my very dear friends, and we came across such a huge amount of data about your family tree and a lot of really interesting stories that we just felt that it was important to get this to you as soon as we could, because it's just really, really amazing. I have done several legacy projects and for like my grandsons and for myself and for my family. And I can tell you that I didn't have 1/10 of the information to go through that you guys have. Really, it's really impressive. So let's get started. We have the Whitfield and Johnson side, and this is both Kim and Brian's Whitfield and Johnson tree. Adam, you're part of the Whitfields, and then Dwayne and Teresa, you're part of the Johnsons. So really and truly, it's for all of you and all of your children, and it's about all of your ancestors and for your descendants. So I'm going to start out with, on this side, I've got a kind of a collage of the Whitfield side, some very interesting stories that we'll go through here in just a moment. But we got young Miles and Julia Whitfield. There's Rutha, Elizabeth Lewis, who reminds me so much of some of Kim's features. And then we have an older Miles and Julia and their family here. Tragic story here, and we'll go through that. And I've got George Daniel Bryant. I just thought he looked very distinguished, kind of like an Abraham Lincoln looking, and he's got his hand up on his chest. And then we've got John and Missouri Gaines. These are the mom and dad, John and Missouri. These are your great-grandparents. And here's your great-grandma, Lochi, and her brother, or her sister and brother. And over here, you have a long line of royals. This just so happens to be Edward, the Black Prince. He wasn't black, but they called him the Black Prince because he was a very fierce warrior back in the 1300s, and he was able to stand alone in battle at the young age of 16. Very impressive. Lots of stories about all the royals in your family. They all come from the Whitfield side, and I'll show you in the tree how to follow that line. It's amazing. You might have royals on both sides. They may even be cousins. And both on the Johnson and Whitfield side, direct cousins. And I'll show you how that happened. So your direct bloodline, we don't do sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and cousins. We just do parents and grandparents and great-grandparents all the way through to the history of what we can get. As far as going through the history books and online and whatever we can get and we can populate the tree with. So there's several books and movies and documentaries that talk about your direct ancestors. So from the Johnson leg, we have King Henry VIII, a big possibility that he is your, on your Grandma Myrtle side, he is your great-grandfather. And I'll tell you the story about that. On the Whitfield side, for sure, King Henry VII, his father, was your great-grandfather and all of his descendants. So, I mean, not descendants, his ancestors. Your great-grandmother, Queen Isabella, was from France, and her father was King Philip from France. So, in other words, there you go again. You've got relatives there and from France. So the royals in France, the royals from Scotland, the royals from Ireland, and also from England. Let's go to, let's talk about Henry VIII for a minute and why, on the Johnson side, why he might be connected to you. So Mary Boleyn, right here, is your great-grandmother. She was married to William Carey, but she was also a very, very long time mistress to King Henry VIII. Now, Mary had two children, maybe three, but two children. One was Catherine Carey, and that was your great-grandmother for sure. Now, whether King Henry VIII or William Carey was your grandfather's, Catherine is for sure your grandmother. What happened was King Henry married Mary's sister, Anne Boleyn. Now, I don't know if you remember the story about Anne Boleyn. It was the second wife. He was all about trying to find a male heir. And he really loved Anne. He lusted for Mary, but he really loved Anne. And she could never give him a son. And the son that they did have died of stillbirth, but she had many miscarriages, but she did have a daughter who did become queen. And it was one of the most, she emerged as one of the most famous queens, Queen Elizabeth I. But just take note of this, what happened, and this is probably after they passed away. Of course, we know Anne Boleyn, she was beheaded by King Henry VIII to marry he married 6 wives, so his third wife was Jane Seymour, and he married her within 3 days of beheading Queen Anne. But anyway, your aunt. And so Catherine and Queen Elizabeth were very, very close throughout their entire lives. Elizabeth was only about 13 when her mother was beheaded. And so she was taken care of by the court and about, at the castle. And she did end up on the throne after all of his trying to get a son as an heir on the throne. He did have a son with the next wife, with Jane Seymour. I don't know why he never became king. But there's Elizabeth, which is also your cousin. But to note that these guys stayed really close. And in fact, Catherine was the bedchamber lady in waiting for Queen Elizabeth her entire life, kind of like a sister would be. So interesting. So here is a lot of pictures of some of your Gigi's, your great-grandmothers. And so we go here with Anne Leighton Corbett. That was the great-granddaughter of Mary Boleyn. And then Catherine Carey, that's her grandmother, the daughter of Mary Boleyn. Here's Isabella Stewart. She was from Scotland, beautiful woman. I wanted to talk to you about these headdresses or neck dresses that they wear and why. So you see this one here. And for many centuries, they had big, heavy clothes and lots of layers, lots of corsets and all this stuff. They didn't always wash everything. They just couldn't, they'd spend all their time washing. And so what they did was, these were basically bibs, and they would catch food. But they were also a status thing. Or like if you were going to a big ball or something, you would wear very ornate neck pieces, but they were kind of to catch food. I thought that was kind of weird. Anyway, I love Sarah. I don't know. I have a feeling this woman worked hard all of her life, but she is the direct link to King Henry VII on the Whitfield side. If you follow her leg all the way, you will hit King Henry VII, who is your great-grandfather, and she is your great-grandmother, Sarah Porter. Now, there's an interesting story of who she married. She married Henry George Gaines, who was the recipient of the Southern Cross, and his leg has quite the story as well. Here's Julia Williams. I'm going to tell a sad story about her family. We're going to do that next. And then there's Missouri Elizabeth Bryant. I just thought she had a really kind face. So let's go to the tree. You have a link to the tree. You can see all of this. You can expand in here. You can expand the legs. You can make it bigger or smaller, right, by just rolling your mouse in this black area. Anytime you get lost or can't figure out where you are, just hit the home button. And I'm going to go there now just to show you. No, I don't want to do that yet. Let's follow this line. I have this open for a reason. So we have Kim and Brian Whitfield here. We only use surnames, although I know that your last name is Dreher. We use surnames, the male surnames or the women's maiden names. And so I just have the Whitfield here to show that this is Brian and Kim's tree. So Adam, when you look at the tree, this part is yours. It's always father's at the top. So this is the Whitfield side up here. And then down here is the Johnson leg. Okay. So as you go, You're going to see your grandparents here. So you see, here's Kim, and then you see your father, and then you see your grandparents, his parents, and then your great grandparents and great great, and it keeps going on and on. And because there's so much information, these legs have to expand to give you more information. So I have this one expanded because we're going to follow Sarah Porter, the one I know that she right here. She was married to Henry George Gaines. We're going to follow Sarah's leg, and we're going to go all the way, and how it hits. It goes all the way to the Witherspoons, and then it keeps going to the Witherspoons, and then it goes to the Gordons, and then it goes to the Douglases, and here's King Henry VII right here, and his parents, and his grandmother, and grandfather. So it keeps going and going. I'm going to leave this here for you guys to keep going with that. I've taken it as far as I'm going to take it. But this can be your project if you wish, and keep going. I did give Kim administrative rights to the tree to be able to add stories and pictures and all of that. And we can give other people access to being the editor as well. But right now you can be a viewer because it's really easy to delete legs. So we don't want too many people to have access to, unless I give you a lesson on how to do it, how to go in the profiles and add pictures and things like that. So let's go to Miles now that we've seen that leg. Let's go to Miles Whitfield. Miles Whitfield was a very well-loved man. He was a big plantation owner, business owner. He had a distillery there in Georgia. And there's a story, a sad story to the ending of his life. This is your great-grandfather. His son was found not guilty of killing him. He was basically, I'll show you a picture of his grandson. Here's Robert. This is your Uncle Robert. This is your grandfather here and your grandmother Julia. Robert here and the rest of the kids. One of these boys is your great-grandfather. I think it's William Pierce. I can't remember his first name. But anyway, this was your Uncle Robert. And he was protecting everybody inside of Robert's house. He was protecting everyone because your grandfather, in his older age, or either too much alcohol they put in the paper or whatever, you can read the story. I have that in here as well. What happened was he was coming after them. And Julia had left the house for quite a while, many months, because it's Alzheimer's. We know more about that now than they did then. And of course, they're just going to blame it on one thing, the alcohol, but it could have been dementia. It could have been a lot of things, but he was raging, which was not normal. And she had left and fled to her son's house. And when he came to the door, he broke the window to the door, and his son Robert had to shoot him on the spot. Let's go to that story. There's him when he was older. Here's the story here in his profile about what happened. I think this is the newspaper clipping. He was found not guilty within 30 minutes. They came back and deliberated for only 30 minutes. The whole family was just so sorrowful with what happened. It was not of their fault or doing, and everybody understood that. So that was Miles. So let's go to, got his gravestone here, have another article here about Robert not being found not guilty. So this is a profile. It's got some information. When you look at a profile, it also have hints. What you're going to want to do is go through these hints. This is computer generated by other people's work, who are probably your cousins and aunts and uncles and all that, working on their tree. These things come up through like the national census. These are very important. The censuses give us a lot of information, and we can attach that to the record. So here we've got the spouse, Julia. We know that this is Miles. Well, they've got a question mark here. Let's go to one that doesn't have a question mark. Here's one. Here's a death record. So we go review. We know this is for him. And we just put yes, and that becomes part of his record. And you just click next. And then I do want to save it to Julia's tree and his wife, because that just gives her more, it gives her more information in her profile as well. So we can do that to all the hints. We go through and just accept them, make sure that it is him, and that helps build their profile. I've already got this picture in their profile. This is a picture of the grave site. I think it's right there near where their plantation was. Yeah, okay. So let's go back to the tree. And how you do that, you just go drop this down and view tree. It's best viewed horizontally, because if you go vertical, it looks like that. And you can't see the tree. So if you go like this and go up to horizontal, it shows the whole tree. And you can make it bigger or smaller. Now, the next story I'm going to talk about is Sarah Porter here again. This is Sarah. That's your great-grandmother. She married Henry George Gaines. He was the recipient, let's take a look at his profile. He was the recipient of the Southern Cross. And we looked and looked and looked everywhere for which grandfather it was when we finally found him. And he received that in 1902. So he was older when he received it, because he was born in 1832 and he got the Southern Cross in 1902. That was just 17 years before he died, before he passed on. So that was quite a distinction. I, again, love their faces. Let's go to the next picture. If we go to the gallery, so when you look at somebody's profile, they have life story, which is computer generated, and you can add more information by clicking edit here. And then we can just type inside here and then press save when we're done. But this is computer generated by just the hints and things. Gives it somewhat, it's not everything. So we need to add to that. And then we have the facts, which is what we know so far. And then we have the gallery, which is things that I've added into as far as images or PDFs, stories, things like that. I'd like to know why he received, or how he received, the Southern Cross. And that's something that, again, is worth researching. It's a real honor to receive that. So look at these. I just love these guys. I think they look like hardworking, good people. That's their daughter there, Jane Gaines. So now if we follow Henry's, let's go back to the tree. If we follow, there's another really cool story on the Whitfield side, and then we'll go over to the Johnsons. If we followed Henry Gaines' leg, there's a Lieutenant Colonel James McCall, who is also an immigrant. I think that's him here. Nope, his father. It's his father. Sorry about that. I think the distinction is, I think this is wrong, and so that happens a lot. I think that this is Captain James Mitchell McCall, Sr. This is DAR eligible. What that means is Daughter of the Revolution. So this is the right one. He came from Ireland in 1721. I know that this is the right one. He actually became a lieutenant colonel. And the wars or not wars, but the sieges he was in was pretty impressive. But what happened was, let's open his profile up. I tried to find a picture, but I couldn't find a picture. But if we go to his gallery, there's a story here. There's several stories. I have uploaded several stories here. This one. Now, when you go to look at this or read this story, you can move it up and down, by rolling your mouse. But up here is where you turn the pages, up here, not this on the side. So if we go through here, we can see this was a painting of a settler. They put this in here. I don't know if it depicts him, but they did clear land and move into the North Carolina and Massachusetts area. And no, North Carolina, sorry. And so then I'm not going to tell the whole story, but in jest, what happened was the Indian agent, the English didn't like what the Indian agent had disappeared. He had married a Cherokee woman. They had 3 children. He had 2 homes. They had everything they wanted, and all of a sudden he was gone. Well, all of a sudden everybody's up in arms thinking that he was taken by the Cherokee. What he did was he just said, I'm done with this life. I want to go live with my people. Well, he wasn't really an Indian, but he became one. And so all of a sudden, through a misunderstanding, there's all these villagers that are and settlers that are up in arms, and they're blaming the Cherokee. They want I think his name was Cameron. They want him back. And so anyway, they put Captain McCall, your grandfather, in charge and said, go to these villages, let's get him back. So it was his mission to do that. And the first and second night went fine. They were going through the villages trying to get a message across that, we're looking for the Indian agent. And then that night they were attacked. And then for months, all the villages and all the settlements were attacked by the Cherokee, and they would bring these people that they left alive back over where your grandfather was at their camp and at the Indian village, and they would torture these people in front of your grandfather. I think it was because he was acting as the Indian agent at that time or something, but they needed a witness. Well, one night he took 3 green ears of corn and he escaped being a prisoner, and he took a horse with no saddle, and bareback he traveled 800 miles over the mountains to get to safety and to get a message in a newspaper that was a national newspaper where hopefully that his family could see that he did escape and he was actually alive and okay. What a story about McCall. Now, after he came back, he went on to command the dragoons, and I'm going to say that was really the dragons, but they said the dragoons. And he was part of the Musgrove Mill siege in Augusta, Georgia, and the Fish Dam Forge and Blackstock's plantation fight. And he commanded his own company of dragoons, and he was promoted to lieutenant colonel. And then he joined in on the Cowpens, big battle of the Cowpens, and that's in the Journal of the American Revolution. Now, if you have many people who fought in the Revolutionary War on both sides. So if you're a daughter, granddaughter, and all of that, you can actually apply to be the daughter, get a certificate as a daughter of the Revolution. That's called the DAR. And that's, kind of a prestigious thing to have. It's nice to have. And it could be part of your profile. So let's go back to the presentation here. So we have several women here that were important in your history on both sides. This is Queen Isabella of England. She came from France. Her father was the King of France. She was only 12 or 13 when she came over. And I don't think she married King Edward right away, but she did go down in history as a really powerful queen consort. So the resources that we use are so available to us right now. Before, you used to have to go to a physical library or whatever to find this information. You have to dig through mounds of old papers and microfiche to find the information that you're looking for. Now you just click of a button and it's all right there. So we have resources at Ancestry.com. Look at the hints under each profile, attach them to their profile. It's kind of like I took a puzzle box, big one, and I dumped it all out on the table. And so far, we've laid the foundation of the rim all the way around, right? Now we've got to put the pieces together, make it make sense. And so that's the important thing to do. Now, on YouTube, you can go to Root Tech and watch a really good series about how to use Ancestry and how you get this information. When you go to ancestry.com under my account, which is where your tree lies, I did that because I pay a subscription so that Kim is able to, or yourself is able to search newspapers from the beginning of newspaper existence. You could put your family members' names in there, keywords in there, and articles will pop up. You can put those into the profiles. You also have military records we can search through, and you have censuses and birth certificates and all sorts of information that has to be part of the subscription. So I didn't want you guys have to pay for a subscription, so that's why you're under my account. And you're more than happy to do that for you guys because I work on like 10 different trees. So I'm going to use it anyway. You can go to google.com. I use that a lot because then a whole bunch of other sites come up with that person's name and their information. And then I save it to their profile. So you can use YouTube, documentaries, and movies, such as Braveheart. The Queen Isabella, I just showed you a picture of her when she was 12 on the horse. Now in Braveheart, it shows where Queen Isabella and William Wallace have somewhat of an affair. But she wasn't even there yet. That was just for the movie's sake. But your people did come from Scotland and did fight those wars with Longshanks and those kings, those tyrant kings. And, there was a lot going on. You even have ancestors in Scotland who were like the kings of the castles and all these little burgs. So there's really a lot of history there. And they wrote down everything. If they sneezed, you knew about it. And so it really we have a lot more information from the 13 and 14 and 1500s, even the 1200s, than we do today. They wrote down everything. So we have WikiTree, Wikipedia. We have art museums and castles, such as the ones to the right here. This is Hever's Castle. This is part of your heritage. If you don't get a chance to go to England and see Hever's Castle, you can view the whole online tour. This was Mary Boleyn, your great-grandmother, and her sister, your aunt, Anne Boleyn's childhood home. And it even has a moat and a drawbridge still. And so I put these in here. This doesn't really go with Anne or Mary, but this is royal crests. You guys have so many crests that I could have done a whole presentation just on the crests alone, but they're very colorful. These are royal crests from the Henry VII and VIII era. So again, these are some scrimmages that your family was part of. There's one here, I think that's this one, is the Cowpens. But anyway, that was Captain McCall was in. So a lot of really cool images here. Battles of the Revolution. So purpose and agenda. It may take many lifetimes to complete the tree or profiles within the trees, and you can do it as a hobby or by yourself or as a family project, which can be really fun. But because you are still here, it is important to complete at least what you know about yourself or others you knew who have passed. It's really important so that your descendants 500 years from now will get a glimpse of your life. Don't leave them with just a date and with no image or story. That's what I find really frustrating when I go for many hundreds of years without nothing, no picture, just a date when they were born and a date when they died, sometimes not even where that was. And it can, leave big chunks of information that's missing. So there is an importance to this, and that goes way beyond just curiosity. It's because this is you. The people that lived 500 or 1,000 years ago is part of who you are. So complete the profiles of those you remember who have passed. Share with your children and grandchildren and have them do the same. Have it be like a Bible you pass down. These are your people. You need to share that with them. Continue to complete profiles by attaching the hints, stories, and images. Read about them and research the times and places for that period and what it was like. I used to go back to, some of my people are from Poland, and Norway. And I would go back to the times of like 1500s and all of that, and what they wore and what life was like there in the village, and the religions, what the religions were. And so it's very interesting to me, at least. And then, so, research about the times, embrace and acknowledge that you are who you are because of them, what they had to go through, such as Captain McCall, such as Sarah Porter, such as Mary, Anne Boleyn, her sister, she was beheaded. So you think about that. It was kind of crazy. Honor them by saying their names out loud. The most important part, though, is you completing your own profile. So let me show you what it looks like to do that. It's pretty simple. Let's go to, I'm going to go home. And I'm going to go to my grandson's tree. This is Wayne Miller's and my children's tree. And we're going to go to tree. And I'm going to show you my profile here. And so I saw the importance of making sure I have a complete profile. So I went through all my hints and I attached them all, attached all my parents, all my children, my husbands, and everything else in there. And then I filled up my gallery. My life story was the most important thing, because I just didn't, it was just like maybe just a little blip. So I went ahead and added my life story, and I'll go slowly here so that when you look through it, you can stop the film and the video and read about what it's like. I wanted 500 years from now, I wanted people to know who I was, what I went through, good and bad, who I loved, who loved me, and life in this time, my travels. I've traveled over 1.5 million miles across the United States. My whole goal in life was that friends and family members alike would be drawn to my warmth and my kind ways. And I said she only shares her deep insight, intuition, and trusted advice genuinely to those who come to her for comfort and compass. And I left an example of a recognition that of endearment that my grandson wrote to me, so that 500 years from now is a very special piece to me. And I'll show you. This is my gallery. All my pictures have stories to them, and that's what you want to do too. When you add your pictures, you add the stories. And right here is the story of my grandson writing me a correspondence. That hardly exists today, getting a letter, getting a card with such admiration from my grandson. And 500 years from now, his grandchildren will say, oh my gosh, we just found a letter from Grandpa Gavin that was sent to his grandmother. And wow, and then we looked at her profile, and is amazing, and she was an amazing woman. And I want to be remembered for things that I've done or things I've gone through in this life. And so this was something I'll keep forever, something you don't get too often. And so let's go back to the gallery, and I'll show you just a few more pieces. Add things about your life. Like from the beginning, my grandpa, he took me when I was only 4 pounds when I was born, but he took me when I was about a month old, and he was a photographer, amateur photographer. He owned a pharmacy on Atwood Avenue, and over by St. Bernard's there. And he took a picture of me, like made me smile. And I look like I'm drunk. And then as a teenager, I grew up in this house here, this house was on Toniwatha Trail in Monona, right on the lake. Directly across from that was the skyline of Madison. Downtown Madison was beautiful. And it was designed by a student of Frank Lloyd Wright. And Brian, you visited me here one day. We went out on the rowboat back in June of '72. And really good memories there. And then so the stories, the gallery shows the stories in there, shows that we were skiers. I was skiers. It shows I married Wayne Miller here back in the early 70s, and just about my life. And my second husband here, JC, married to him for 32 years. And so when they see this, they'll get an inkling of what my life was like, my children, and so have that be a guide to how you do your profile. Let me get back here. There we go. So, I wanted to show you this real quick. So if this doesn't look like Marsha from Brady Bunch, right? But this is probably what you guys remember, me, Brian, and Kim. This was 9th grade at La Follette. So let's go back to your tree now that you can see it, and I'll show you the difference between having a complete profile. Let's see, where am I? I need to go home. So anytime you get lost, you go home. And then I go up here is how you can transfer to different trees. And then I go down to Whitfield, which right now we have 845 people and 493 photos. And we just click go to tree. There we go. Now we're back. So let me show you what an empty profile looks like. Let's go, whoops, that one has a picture, not that one. Here we go. So this is Louisa Freeman McCall Gaines. Let's go to her profile. We know when she was born, when she died. This again is a computer generated life story. We have this here. She's your 4th great grandmother. Now, when you go to facts, not much here, right? Not much there. Go to gallery. It's empty. Go to hints. Now we could look for hints and we can attach these hints to her, which would be something that you guys do. You could go and try to find pictures of her and add that. And so that's an empty profile. You don't get much from it. That's why it's important to fill out the profiles as much as you can for the people you remember and for yourself. So let's go back. So that's the purpose and agenda. It's not for everybody right now in their lives. I mean, you may be busy working 2 jobs and going to college or having, kids and all that kind of stuff. But, it seems like when you get older, you may have more time. Maybe it's a winter project, could be hobby. But I think it's fun. So their story is your story. It honors you when you honor them. It's been my honor to start this project for a very dear friend of mine and her family. I'm available for any questions, or if you would like to start your own family tree, please give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help you get started. It's free if you go on Ancestry.com to start your tree. Also, if you want to add photos and stories to the profiles, maybe you start a project and you start working on one leg, or you have some information, we can scan those pictures and Kim has access to put them in there to attach them, or you can call me. My phone number is right here. Again, it's been my pleasure and my honor, and thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.